Karen can't comprehend I don't work in the OR. I work at a level 1 trauma center, which means we handle all kinds of emergencies, and we never close. My role is in sterile processing, a critical department that cleans, repacks, and sterilizes reusable instruments for everything from minor procedures to major surgeries. Without us, hospitals simply couldn't function. One weekend, while working, I was coming back from a break and had to pass by some family consultation rooms. It's important to note that in sterile processing, we wear the same scrubs as the operating room staff. This often leads to confusion about who we are. As I walked by, a visibly anxious man flagged me down. I had my earbuds in, so it took me a moment to respond. "Can I help you?" I asked. He demanded to know where his wife was, insisting she had been in surgery for over an hour without any updates. I explained that I didn't work in the OR and couldn't provide information. "Why can't you tell me anything?" he pressed. "Sir, I don't know who you or your wife are, and I really can't help you," I replied. He raised his voice, insisting I needed to find out what was happening. I calmly told him not to yell at me and reiterated that I worked in sterile processing. Just as I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm. "Hey, get your hands off me," I shouted. In that moment, a nurse from the OR appeared, witnessing the escalating situation. She quickly ran to get security. Adrenaline surged through me as I prepared to defend myself. When the public safety officers arrived, they separated us and took my account of what happened. I could hear the man yelling from the other room. Eventually, I was allowed to return to my department to fill out an incident report. As I walked back, I saw him being escorted away in handcuffs. I reported the incident to my supervisor and completed the paperwork. I learned that assaults on healthcare workers are alarmingly common, especially in high-stress environments like hospitals. While I understand that being in a hospital can be overwhelming, it's never an excuse for violence. This was my first experience with such an incident, and I realized I need to improve my de-escalation skills. I also learned about some training courses available at the hospital, which I plan to attend. I do feel for that man's wife. I can only imagine how difficult it must have been for her to wake up without her husband by her side, and I wish he had managed his emotions better. This was a first for me, and I'm still processing what happened. I'll keep you all updated if anything else comes up. My wife slapped me in my 20s, and I brushed it off. I shouldn't have. I've been reflecting on something from long ago, and I need to share it. About 16 or 17 years ago, when we were in our 20s with 2 young kids at home, my wife slapped me during an argument. It was the only time it ever happened. It didn't physically hurt, but the shock hit me hard. At the time, I brushed it off. I grew up watching movies where a woman slapping a man was treated as a dramatic moment everyone just overlooked. So I did too. We were young and stressed, and I chalked it up to postpartum issues. I never thought to question it. Over the years, every time I tried to bring it up, she would cry deeply. I ended up comforting her, feeling responsible for her emotions, about something that happened to me. I kept telling myself she was going through various phases: postpartum, overstimulation, premenopause, and eventually menopause. Each stage came with a new explanation, convincing me I needed to be more patient and understanding. What I never did was give myself any empathy. Looking back, I realized my frustration built quietly. I struggled to know when I was allowed to be upset or express my feelings. If I voiced anything, it would get linked to whatever she was experiencing. I felt I had to calm her down or avoid pushing her too far, especially around the kids, so I stayed silent, absorbing it all. I hate that this changed how I view things. It made me numb toward people dealing with depression or anxiety. I know those struggles are real and serious, but for years, they were reasons I was expected to suppress my feelings, and it slowly shut something off inside me. I never issued ultimatums. Everything I read said they were bad for relationships. I was scared to say, I can't do this anymore, fearing she might spiral. The kids were too young to handle that, so I kept the peace. I cooked every meal for 17 years and managed the house and most bills. She contributed, but it felt like a small fraction compared to my effort. I always told myself that was fine. That's what love and partnership are about. In a strange way, I believe she appreciates me. She knows I've put up with a lot and helped her through tough times. But appreciation isn't the same as truly fitting together in the long run. Now that the kids are older, I finally see our dynamic for what it is. I don't want to live the rest of my life this way, always swallowing my feelings to spare someone else discomfort. Maybe the slap wasn't the whole story. The bigger issue is everything I absorbed afterward, everything I never said, everything I excused. Next week, my lawyer will serve her papers. I don't feel happy or victorious. I just feel like I'm finally listening to the part of myself that never got space in this marriage. I mentally broke my fiancé, and I don't think I'm ever getting her back. There's a lot to unpack here, but I'll do my best to keep it brief. I'm a 41-year-old man, and I met my fiancé, a 36-year-old woman, 5 years ago at work. She was a single mom to a 2-year-old boy, and the father wasn't in the picture, which she believed was for the best. We started as friends, and over time, our relationship blossomed into something deeper. She's an incredible person, and I love her dearly. As our relationship grew, I learned about her past, a traumatic, abusive relationship that nearly cost her life on 2 occasions. It took a year for her to share the full story, and I learned about her scars before I understood the pain behind them. I never wanted to push her to talk about it. Her ex left before she knew she was pregnant, believing it would keep her safe. He later found out about their son, but respected her wishes to stay away. Since then, they've had no contact. We send a yearly update to his family on the boy's birthday, just to let them know he's happy and healthy. To us, her son is our son. I've been in his life since he was little. He calls me Dad and carries my last name. I love him dearly, despite my feelings toward his biological father. My fiancé has always maintained that her ex isn't a bad person, just someone who made terrible choices. I understood that it was a trauma bond, and I accepted long ago that I wouldn't fully grasp her feelings about him. For years, we rarely discussed him, and she seemed to be healing well. We even got engaged earlier this year. Recently, our son turned 7, and she asked me to reach out to her ex's brother for our annual update. They had been supportive during her toughest times, but I had never met them or spoken to them beyond those yearly messages. When I opened the message, I discovered recent exchanges between my fiancé and her ex's brother. She had been asking about her ex, if he was okay, and what hurt me the most, if he was happy. I confronted her about it, and she explained that she had a bad feeling something had happened to him and wanted to quiet her mind. When I pressed her about the "is he happy" question, she confessed she felt guilty for being content in her life. I struggled to understand how she could care about someone who had caused her so much pain. In trying to help her see the truth, I used our son as an example. I asked her how she would feel if he were in her position, bruised and hurt. That's when she finally broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, saying she would kill him if he ever hurt our son. I told her that the feelings she was experiencing now were what I had felt toward her ex for years. We had some tough conversations, and she seemed to finally grasp that the reasons behind the abuse didn't matter. What he did was unacceptable. I thought we could finally put this behind us, but I now realize I pushed her too hard. The next morning, I woke up to our son yelling that Mommy was asleep on the bathroom floor. She was disoriented, her eyes puffy and barely open. She asked where the baby was and believed she was pregnant, not remembering how she ended up there. She slept the entire day, and when she woke up, she didn't understand why it was evening already and forgot I had found her in the bathroom. We went to the doctor the next day, and she started medication and therapy. That was last month. Since then, she's been a shell of her former self. We don't talk much, and she sleeps a lot. A few days ago, she approached me, asking why I was still around and saying she didn't deserve me. During another breakdown, she revealed that the morning I found her in the bathroom, she had a vivid dream about a life with her ex, where she was pregnant. It had consumed her for weeks. She thought she was healed, but realized she had just locked everything away, and it had grown into something darker. I had never seen her so broken, and I felt equally shattered. She got worse, and I ended up calling an ambulance. One moment she was lucid, and the next, she was speaking as if she were back in the hospital, after her ex abused her, recounting her injuries. She was taken in, and I stayed home with our son, feeling utterly helpless. I felt my heart tear in two. Even writing this now is a gut punch. In trying to help her understand the severity of her past, I inadvertently broke her. I was struggling myself, and for some reason, I thought the only people who could help were her ex's brother and his partner. I called them that night and spoke for hours. While I knew the story, hearing it from their perspective was eye-opening. I didn't fully grasp the extent of the damage her ex had caused until that night, in my attempt to help. I feel like I've taken away the last bit of sanity she was holding on to. I worry we've completely lost her, and I don't know how to explain to our son that I'm the reason his mom will never be the same. You want it? No problem. I have to admit, I really dislike my mother-in-law. She's one of the most self-centered people I've ever met. Just being around her feels like a black hole of misery and anxiety, sucking the joy out of everything. Thankfully, she lives in Long Island and rarely ventures out, so we only see her once or twice a year. We have 3 kids, and she's only visited one of them in the last 5 years. But she had no problem driving 30 minutes to buy a lamp at an auction in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's frustrating. About 5 years ago, my wife and I bought her uncle's cabin in upstate New York. It sits on a beautiful 17 acres. The cabin was a bit run down, but we fixed it up and try to visit as often as we can in the summer. The property came with a few sheds filled with tools and 2 old Ford tractors. When we bought it, we specified that all contents convey. Her uncle didn't care about the stuff. It was just taking up space. After the sale, my mother-in-law called, claiming she had items there that belonged to her. She insisted that a chainsaw, one of the tractors, and a shop vac were hers, along with a bunch of random tools she didn't even know how to use. My wife was taken aback, and we told her she should have come to get everything before we closed. We didn't mind selling the tractor and getting her the money, but she insisted on keeping it. We explained that we needed to get rid of the tractor to make room for a garage. She threatened to sue us if we sold any of her stuff. My wife was really upset, but I told her not to worry. I'd handle it. The next weekend, while we were upstate, I rolled the tractor out of the shed and gathered her mother's items. My wife asked what I was doing, and I told her I was preparing to give her mom her stuff. She didn't care. So I decided to take it a step further. That night, after everyone fell asleep, I hatched a plan. I quietly loaded the non-working tractor onto my trailer, along with her toolbox, the chainsaws, the shop vac, and all the miscellaneous tools into a large wooden crate. I had to be careful to keep the noise down, but I managed to get everything loaded up and hit the road. It was a 2.5-hour drive to her house, and I arrived around 2 a.m. I backed into her driveway, set up the ramps, and unloaded everything as quietly as I could. I was amazed I hadn't been caught yet. After about 20 minutes, I was out of there, grinning from ear to ear. I knew I'd be in trouble with my wife in the morning, but I couldn't help but laugh. On the way home, I stopped to grab breakfast for everyone, bagels, coffee, and donut. I was practically giggling to myself. When I got home, my wife asked why I still had the trailer hooked up. I played it cool, saying I wasn't sure I was going to the lumber yard. I was buzzing with adrenaline, waiting for the inevitable call. Around 9:15, my phone rang. I saw her look at her phone and roll her eyes. I encouraged her to pick up, and as soon as she did, I could hear her mother screaming on the other end. My wife was confused, so I put the call on speaker and said, "You wanted your tractor? You got it," before hanging up. I explained what I'd done, and thankfully, my wife found it hilarious. My mother-in-law called several more times, but we didn't answer. She even texted that she was calling the police. My wife started to panic, but I reassured her I'd handle it. Around 1 p.m., I received a call from the police. I calmly explained the situation to the officer, who quickly realized how unreasonable my mother-in-law was being. He informed her that unless she had proof of ownership or a storage agreement, there was nothing they could do. In the end, she didn't talk to us for 6 months, which felt like a win for me. For 3 years, I switched my partner's tea in the morning because I couldn't deal with his fake snobbery. When my ex and I started dating, I made him a morning cup of tea as a sweet gesture. It became a routine for the 3 years we were together. It's a small thing that can brighten someone's day and a nice way to learn how they like things. My morning tea was simple. Any old tea bag, usually Yorkshire tea if it was on sale. a splash of milk, and the first cup always had a teaspoon of sugar. My ex, however, had a very specific ritual. He insisted on Compson's Punjana tea, a teaspoon of milk, and absolutely no sugar. He was convinced he could tell right away if it wasn't his favorite. At 33, he had never liked any other tea than Fortnum and Mason's Royal Blend. At first, when he stayed over, I entertained this notion and made his tea just the way he liked it. He would thank me and tell me I made the best cups of tea. It was sweet, and making it 3 times a week felt manageable. But as time went on, he started spending nearly every day at my place. His demands for his morning ritual grew, and as a student, I couldn't keep affording that brand of tea. What was wrong with PG Tips or any non-branded supermarket tea? Tea is tea, after all. So I began making his cup with any tea bag, a teaspoon of milk, and no sugar. I always made it when he was in the shower or still in bed, so he wouldn't catch me. Initially, he was suspicious, always asking if it was Thompson's Punjana. After a few trials with different teas, I found the right one where he couldn't taste the difference. I would sip it with him and listen as he went on about how you could taste the quality, and that there was really no other tea like it. When we moved in together, it became harder to disguise my secret. I was studying at college, so I controlled the weekly food shopping and wanted to minimize costs. I would buy 1 bag of his tea and 2 bags of mine each week, keeping them in the drinks cupboard. In the mornings, I'd take 1 of his tea bags and give him 1 of mine instead. I even shared his tea with my tutors at college. He would comment that I ran out of my tea bags faster because of the quality, claiming that, with Punjana, 1 bag lasted a long time. Little did he know. This went on for a couple of years, and I never told anyone out of fear he would find out. After all, he couldn't tell, so why ruin the fun? It saved me money, and it was amusing. I never let him make a cup of tea unless I was away, so he never had to find out. After we split up, we remained good friends. Every time I visited our old flat, he would ask me to make a cup of tea like I used to, reminiscing about how everyone he dated after me could never make it taste the same. He even said that when he made it himself with Punjana, he could never get it right, and that I was some sort of special tea maker. I still haven't told him. So, to sum it up, my ex played up his fussiness with tea. I switched his morning cup to a much cheaper tea bag, and he never noticed the difference. Every woman I get close to has some form of experience with sexual abuse, and it's made me realize how much of a massive problem it truly is. Recently, while out with some new friends, one girl I've become particularly close to shared her story about a guy who has been stalking her. She had mentioned his strange behavior before, but this time she revealed that he had actually assaulted her at a house party a long time ago. The thought of still dealing with his obsession scares her deeply. I could see how difficult it was for her to relive those memories, and my heart broke for her. What struck me is that every girl I'm close to has a similar story. My closest friend was drugged after meeting up with a guy she thought was a friend. He tried to make a move on her, despite knowing she was in a relationship. Thankfully, one of her friends was there to help her get home safely. The story that impacted me the most came from a girl I got close to last year. She seemed intimidating at first, but she's one of the kindest people I know. She opened up about being assaulted when she was just 14. The trauma led to waves of depression and anxiety, especially after the perpetrator spread lies about her. She had to seek psychiatric help and struggled to trust anyone. Even though she spoke about it with a smile, I could hear the pain in her voice. It's heartbreaking that so many women feel the need to downplay their experiences, saying it's in the past or apologizing for bringing it up. It's a sad reality that every girl seems to have a story like this. They carry their pain quietly, feeling like a burden for sharing. I've come to realize how widespread this issue is. As a guy, I've had a certain level of privilege that kept me unaware of the depth of this problem. It's then eye-opening to learn how many people around me have been affected. Each story I hear breaks my heart, but it also fills me with respect for these women. Their strength and bravery in facing such trauma is nothing short of inspiring. I may never fully understand what they've gone through, but I admire their resilience. Even when they feel vulnerable, their courage shines through, I want to acknowledge everyone who has shared their experiences. It's been incredibly moving to see such open discussions, and I plan to read through all the replies to honor those voices. Thank you for sharing your stories. It's been a powerful reminder of the strength within our community. I'm not a computer person, but allow me to be as unhelpful and condescending as possible while I demand you fix my problem. This actually happened a couple of weeks ago. I work at an out-of-hours IT desk, supporting multiple businesses when their IT teams have left for the day. It was 11:30 p.m. when I received a call from my least favorite business. We had no system access and very little documentation, so their calls were always a challenge. "Service desk, how can I help?" I answered. "Oh, hello, I'm not able to print," said the caller, who sounded very affluent. "Okay, any error messages? Any signs of life from the printer?" "Now hold on, I'm not a computer person, so you'll need to use simple terms," he replied. "What happens when you print?" "Nothing happens, that's why I'm calling you." "Do you see any messages appear on the screen when trying to print?" "No." I have a low tolerance for callers who can't provide basic details. And this guy was coming across as quite condescending. "Is your printer turned on? Can you see any lights?" "Of course. Can you walk me through what you generally do to print something?" "I'm not a computer person, so you'll need to be more clear. Tell me how you'd usually print." "Look here, I don't really understand what you're asking me. What would you usually do to print?" "I don't understand you." "Okay, sir, I'd like to connect remotely to your computer, so I can see what's on the screen. Is that okay?" "This is all very complicated. I'm not sure what you want to do." "I'd like to access your computer to see what's wrong." "I'm sorry, can you explain that more clearly?" "I'm not sure how much clearer I can be. I need to remotely connect to try and fix this for you." "Look, this is terribly unfriendly for people who aren't technically savvy like myself. Why can't you fix this? I'm trying to help you, but you haven't provided much detail on the issue." "I need to remotely connect to see what's going on. I respect that you're not technically savvy, but we do expect a certain level of knowledge from users after hours. I can ask the main service desk to call you back in the morning if you'd prefer." "No. Look, this is very important, and I need this fixed. How do you get on my screen?" "Firstly, I need you to open a web browser or just go to Google." "I just use this for email. What on earth is a web browser?" "Do you use Google?" "Yes, of course I do." "Okay, please go to Google." We spent a painful amount of time getting the remote connection working. "Thank you. I'm now connected. I'm going to take a look at the printer setup now. I see the printer is reporting not connected. Can you check to make sure it's plugged in, please?" I Googled the model number and discovered it was an old Epson printer that only used USB. At this point, I was losing my patience. "But I don't know how," he exclaimed. "I'm sorry, but I really can't help you with this part. You're the one physically located with the computer and the printer. Please go to the printer and make sure any wires coming from it are plugged into the PC." Okay. Several minutes later, I heard the unmistakable sound of a device connecting in Windows. "Okay, the printer is now showing as connected, so it looks like the plug was disconnected. Please try printing again." He navigated to Outlook, opened an email about discounted camping products, and proceeded to print it off. I could hear the printer in the background, so it seemed like we were good now. "Yes, it's working, but you didn't help me at all," he said before hanging up. He was such a pain. He even left the remote connection running in the background, so I spent the next half hour moving his mouse every time he tried to click something before I got bored and disconnected. AITA for yelling at my friend about her BO after literally throwing up? Let me share what happened. I've been in college classes with this girl for the past year. We're in the same degree program and have become friendly. I don't dislike her, but I reached my limit and might have gone too far. This semester, we ended up sitting next to each other in every class. At first, I thought the smell was just a temporary slip in hygiene due to stress, but it persisted every single day. The best way I can describe it is like strong body odor, as if she had been working outside on a hot summer day without showering. By our third class of the day, I was feeling nauseous. After a month of this, another friend admitted they sat on the opposite side of the room because the smell was so distracting. Hearing that broke my heart. I hoped someone would tell me if I were in her position. One day, I spent hours crafting a text to let her know about the body odor. I wanted to be kind and not confrontational. She read it, gave a thumbs up, and never mentioned it again. The next day, the smell was back, and I was at my wit's end. Fast forward to finals crunch time. We were working late on a project with other students, and I couldn't take it anymore. When she scooted closer to me, I rushed to the nearest trash can to throw up. She asked if I was okay, but I couldn't hold back. I told her that her smell had been making me nauseous all year. In that moment, I blurted out, "How do you not smell yourself? How can you not notice how bad this is?" She said she was just forgetful and that her family didn't remind her. Before I stormed out, I raised my voice and pleaded with her to just take a shower. I felt awful for yelling, and I know I sounded harsher than I intended. I was exhausted and at my limit, but I still have to sit next to her for another 3 weeks before the semester ends. I feel guilty for snapping in front of others, but after months of this and my previous attempts to address it gently, I felt I had no other options. AITA for finally snapping and yelling at my friend about her body odor after literally throwing up.